abortion laws. All eyes are on the federal appeals court, set to hear oral arguments on January 7th over Texas abortion law. Now, that law bans abortions in the state after 6 weeks. And joining us now to discuss is former attorney to President Trump and Newsmax contributor Jenna Ellis. Jenna, Happy New Year. Thanks for joining us.
Happy New Year to you as well, Amanda. Thanks.
Jenna, what are you anticipating for those oral arguments which are set for later this month on Texas's controversial abortion law?
Yeah, well, this is an interesting case because, of course, the Supreme Court has continued the Texas abortion law to continue until the merit-based arguments go all the way through the lower courts. And interestingly, one of the circuit judges, and we're talking about the Fifth Circuit here, actually said that the oral arguments in this case aren't necessary and probably contravene the Supreme Court's opinion, and it should actually go back to the district court first. So I think there is a lot of muddiness around this particular issue. And what's interesting to me about this is it's probably going to depend on the outcome of the Dobbs case, which of course was also argued at the Supreme Court back in December on the issue of whether or not Roe versus Wade really would continue. And so depending on the outcome and the timing of the outcome of the Dobbs case, I think could really influence the Texas case. But more importantly, for Americans and pro-lifers in particular to be concerned with what happens with abortion as a fundamental issue at the Supreme Court in the Dobbs case is really going to direct all of the other cases across the country. And I anticipate that the Supreme Court is going to significantly undermine Roe versus Wade and specifically the viability of laws like the Texas case and for states to be able to direct the law on abortions in their state. So that is going to simply trigger the fight for life at the state level.
Jenna, can you go into a little more detail about what Dobbs is and how the Supreme Court could affect this going forward?
Yeah, so the Dobbs case, of course, the oral argument that happened in that case was all about whether or not the viability of pregnancies for anything that was after the viability stage or 15 weeks was constitutionally protected, or whether or not the courts would overturn the laws like the Mississippi case in that instance. And so the question really is whether or not all pre-viability abortions can be determined constitutional or not. And so this is really going to affect the Roe versus Wade and the Casey versus Planned Parenthood decision. And what was interesting to me about that particular oral argument was that a lot of the argument focused on viability, and the leftist pro-abortion advocates at the Supreme Court actually tried to argue that viability was the only bright line standard that the Supreme Court could implement for abortion. But really, the only bright lined, non-movable scientific standard is that life begins at conception. Viability, of course, can change. And Justice Gorsuch actually pushed back on that and said, well, with advanced medical technology, determined pregnancy by pregnancy, viability really is very much a fluid term. And so how the Supreme Court actually rules in that case, whether or not they do more of a narrow decision and simply give this back to the states, or whether they have more of a broad decision that undermines Roe and abortion, I think is going to be very fascinating. But ultimately, the question is going to become whether or not states can implement laws that restrict abortion and protect life. And I think that we are going to see the Supreme Court at least go that far.
Jen, I think that's what we're kind of seeing right now is what the states are doing. And, you know, when we're talking about Roe v. Wade and how important this will be for issues for voters in the upcoming midterm elections in 2022.
Yeah, I think that this is proving this year that this is not a settled question. You have people like Dianne Feinstein very famously, saying that this is a super precedent. And you have a lot of Democrats who are saying we need to be past the abortion question in the Supreme Court. But of course, the moral legitimacy of protecting life and the constitutional question that says that life absolutely deserves protection from the government as a fundamental right is always going to be an issue that pro-life advocates, pro-constitutional advocates, and conservatives are always going to fight for. So this is going to be a significant question on the 2022 ballot, I think, regardless of how the Supreme Court ultimately decides, because either you're going to have conservatives and constitutionalists very happy with this opinion, and they're going to be pushing more pro-life candidates, and I think that's going to be a huge issue for Republicans, or you're going to see Democrats more happy, and they're going to be more solid in their pro-choice and pro-abortion stance. But regardless, This is a question that is going to continue in America because you have such divisive stances on both sides. And so this isn't a final super precedent. It's always going to be one until we actually all understand that the Constitution does protect life.
Yeah, Jenna, every single year it seems like we focus on this abortion debate. And this last year, as you're mentioning, we've seen Mississippi, we've seen Texas. So it seems like it's focusing a little bit more on the states. Quickly here, how concerned do you think we should be when it comes to this argument?
I think it's actually the correct argument because federalism requires that this isn't something that the Supreme Court can have jurisdiction over. And so that was the problem initially with all of these human sexuality cases that started in 1965 with Griswold versus Connecticut, saying that the Supreme Court can read into the Constitution this fundamental right to privacy that covers some abortions in some circumstances. And so when we have this overbroad reach by the federal government to delegate to the states and tell them what they can and can't do in terms of passing laws in their state goes well beyond the margins of what limited powers are delegated to the federal government. So I do think this is a state question, and the Supreme Court at minimum should abide by federalism and should give this question back to the states. But that's only going to mean that by state is where pro-life advocates and activists need to be even more just more focused on their own states and understanding the complexities that go into the states and really stand up and advocate firmly. And I think we're going to see that instead of a federal question, this is going to now be a 50-state question.
Jenna Ellis, thank you so much for breaking down abortion laws from 2021, and we will be keeping our eye on this in 2022. Happy New Year, and thanks for joining us.
Happy New Year to you as well. Thanks.
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news channel, now in more than 70 million homes. You can get Newsmax TV on your cable system or check your cable guide. And if your system doesn't carry Newsmax, call them, tell them you want Newsmax TV, because we're real news for real people.